Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Design Recharge, a special Friday episode. I'm super excited to have Amarilys Henderson back on the show. I think this is episode 217 or 218. She was on the show back in April talking, it was the first ever sketchnoting series. It was a series that I had done, and now it went over so well, and we had so much to talk about that wasn't necessarily sketchnoting, so I had her back on, and I'm so excited. So one of the things we ended with last time, Amarilys, was you have taught Skillshare classes, which that's how I found you, because you taught me how to make cute faces and faces that looks like a lot of more real than just these orbs that I was doing. Great. And then you've been represented by other people, other artist reps, and then you kind of went on your own, and now you've been doing that. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about, because you did your first, was it your first ever trade show?
Yeah, first surface design trade show, yes.
So surface design, meaning, explain that to us. I think I know what that is, but why don't you explain it?
Sure. I've been explaining it a lot to my friends because they're like, what did you go to? Was it like a big craft fair? And I went to a trade show that's for basically surface design is art that goes on stuff. And so companies, the people that walk through are companies that sell different products, and they are looking to purchase rights, permission to use a piece of artwork for an amount of time, for a specific area, for a specific use, for their business.
So what do you mean specific area? Because I get use, like it's for...
right, stationery, right, upholstery, or bedding, or, any of those markets. So, when I talk about art licensing, licensing is basically that permission to use the art. And it breaks down into 3 areas that you need to kind of, in order to quote out how much it would be, or just what we're talking here. And one is that category, one is that term, for how long, and the area. So it could be for North America, it could be for the world, or it could be for one country. So one image license for one image would be less expensive than for one that would be worldwide.
So usage could be like, it's going to be on sheets and comforters and plates. Those would be 3 different surface. I mean, sheets and comforters sort of makes more sense to be as a unit. But again, so how do you know how to, I mean, we are not even going on the questions yet, but how do you even know? And just so you know, for anybody who's new, if you put a question in the chat or you hit the Q&A, we will get that question answered for sure. I will put your questions above my questions. So, and Fabio, I'm wearing your shirt today. So, all right. He just came in, so I just wanted to say, hey. So how do you know, and because kind of tell us a little bit of your background and when you started doing this, because I think this is something that a lot of people would like to do, and they kind of think, oh, it'll just be me and I'll be able to play with my kids all day and then just paint a little, right? But that is not how it is. You have to really work this. So take us kind of from the first to where you are now.
So I have always painted, right? I'm that girl that is always doodling in her sketchbook. And I always thought, well, I do pretty drawings, so somebody's going to want them, right? And so I did that a bit, and I do still have my Etsy shop, and that's basically, hey, I did something, you like it, you buy it, right? But how do you get to the place where your clients are companies and businesses and making their own money, and not just individual customers? It's, boy, this is a lot to chew off of. Let me go back to my story. So I discovered art licensing after college. I went to Savannah College of Art and Design, and I majored in illustration. So I had an understanding about you contact clients, you tell them, hey, can we set aside some time? You do all this cold calling, you send them emails, you send them printouts, you try to meet in person if possible, and you basically just want to get your portfolio in their faces and let them say yay or nay, or we'll keep in touch. And I did that a bit for editorial illustration, book illustration, but with surface design, what interested me about it as I started to kind of hear the buzz through gosh, I can't even think that far how I first heard about it. But say Instagram, from Periscope, from blogs, that this was a thing. I loved that it just looked fun, and I guess I don't feel like I always need to say something with what I paint. I just want to relish in what looks awesome and would look great on something tangible. And so I started looking around, and there are one blog that I really have gained a lot from is Joan Behringer's blog, and I think I mentioned it before. And she is just very generous with her information. There are even lists of companies that license art in home decor and greeting stationery and things like that, and you can just contact them. One of her lists was for agencies, and that's actually how I found the agency that I was with. So it was in a long list of agencies, and I took, I don't know how many hours of hitting each link and checking them out and seeing if I felt like I fit in, if I wanted to be a part of that group. And then I kind of categorized them into my top and worked there down, emailing and sending out my work. Go ahead.
I have a question. So how do you know you fit in? Was that like you were offering something that they didn't have, or they were offering things that were similar to what you were doing?
That's a great question, because I felt that rub, right? Because I look at a website and I think, they don't have anything that's like mine, but maybe that's why I should be with them, right? Well, it kind of has to, I like to use the word pivot. So, this is where I'm at. Let me just pivot 45 degrees. Would it go with this? Would this particular piece, whatever's on my desk right now, whatever I'm really excited about, would that go on this website? And would it be something that complements and not just drown out either? Mostly I was looking for quality of work, because there are a lot of licensing agencies that are happy to represent you because they have nothing to lose, really. But I wanted to be with agencies that I felt I could be proud to be a part of. And through that, a couple of agents kindly declined. They only had about 7 artists, which I thought was great. Just a lot of one-on-one time. But they offered some insight, and they said, you have great work. Let's see it on some products. And let's see some examples that are this and that. Like we market to, what can I use this for? I have a specific need. And if your work is just pretty and it's not meshing with that specific need, it's just, it's not useful to them. So I was like, thank you. And I went into Photoshop and I started playing around with what could go with what. And I did start to kind of gain an eye for, I really like this piece and it looks terrible on stuff, right? Because it's maybe, not to say that this can't be done, but it was a portrait, right? And so how often do you drink out of a mug that has a portrait on it? Not often, unless it's someone famous or unless it's done in a certain way. There are artists who establish their style as, this is what I do, and there's always, a girl or a bird or something, right? And it's maybe very different, and they break through, and that's awesome. But I understand that that's not the mainstream way to have a career. So you have to be somewhat trend-based. And through that, then I did land an agent, and I was with them for 3 years. And so my work did go to these trade shows. And every time, that time came around, I would think, oh, maybe I'll go too and just experience it and be at the show. But it never happened until I think it had to happen, right? When we were going to go to see Surtex ourselves, my husband and I, and make a little vacation out of it. And then I just had to, with his permission, pull the trigger and actually do the show. So does that take you back enough to know?
I think so. So we had a couple questions in the chat. One was, when did you graduate from SCAD? Because Catherine, who also, I think Catherine studied illustration, and Krishna, who's in New Jersey, Hoboken, she also studied illustration at SCAD.
Cool. 2004.
2004. Okay. Well, there's that one question. So Andre, he lives in Portugal, and I love that he
Mhm.
comes. So thanks, Andre. He's also an illustrator, great
Yeah,
illustrator.
he was on here
And
last time.
yeah, yeah. So he asked. He said he had no idea that there were things licensing agencies.
Yes.
And I am.
So
Oh, go ahead.
you have art agencies. If we're just talking illustration, because then we can go into fine art. But
Right.
With illustration, when you say art agency, it's a smaller. It tends to be a smaller group of artists. Not very many are 7, like I said. 3 dozen is kind of a norm for those agents. And then art licensing agencies, and they tend to have many, many, many artists, hundreds even. And they include photographers too. Maybe their focus is they actually don't have a focus because they span so much, and they have several agents that work for that art licensing agency. And one is specialized in books, and one is specialized in home decor. And then they draw from the wealth of artists that they have and say, send me your new stuff. And then they send it out to their people, or just put it up on their website and hope for awesome traffic.
So you, when you you were just planning on doing Surtex as just going and walking, because I think that you had not broken up with your agent, but you had let them go. You'd let that stuff lapse or whatever, because you were able to kind of understand, at least through just trial and error maybe, or through the industry, you'd had enough interest or whatever time in that you were able to, you wanted to kind of make some connections on your own. So some of those people that were maybe licensing agents that had maybe 36 artists that they were representing, they would be at the show maybe in a bigger booth. And then there might be, and I don't know who else would really be at the show.
Collectives, that would be a group of artists that decide to pitch in for a booth. Exhibiting at a trade show is expensive. So I went with the smallest setup, and it suited me great. I decided 2 months in advance, which is really nothing in the planning world. I had my banners printed and had my books printed, and was figuring out a lot of things in those 8 weeks. And that small booth, which I nicely call a lemonade stand. I don't mean to be mean, but my little lemonade stand, that was $2,700 to show at the show. And of course that doesn't include travel and lodging and all that kind of stuff. So to have a standard small booth that's 8 feet by 10 feet is almost $6,000, I want to say.
Wow.
5,600 maybe. And then you add on to that, you could put those together and have a 16 by 10, have a corner spot, all those things can be added on.
That's just the space. They might provide you a table or no table. It's just the space. You have to do everything else.
It's, you have some walls, a podium, or kind of a table space, and then 1 to 2 chairs, depending on which model you choose.
Right.
And then it's just plain white. So you come in with your backdrops and your work and everything else.
And that stuff's can be pretty expensive getting it printed. I mean, you're talking, you said $2,700 and then all the promos. So you made these Blurb books, which were, I think, a great way for you to show, and you had 3 of them printed, right?
Right. So, which was a little bit of overkill, but I enjoyed it. So,
well, sometimes it's nice to have, I guess some people just have stuff on the computer. You had your computer also for anything that wasn't in the book, but it is nice to see it printed, because again, you can kind of see how it's going to be printed. It gives you, instead of it just being colors on a screen, it now becomes printed, right? More realistic for them.
So my biggest fear was, I'm investing all this in doing this show. I'm trying to not see it as a, ROI, return on investment, because I wasn't really planning on doing this. This is like a very expensive learning experience for me. I was really trying to see it that way. But my fear was that, people would walk by and have a need that I could meet and not know it. So that's why I really wanted to have things visually out there. I believe in being too much, and then letting them decide. I really wanted them to have the opportunity to decide. And I felt like if I had things on an iPad, on a laptop, then they would have to initiate, ask questions, and then we can see some work. So I had these 3 books just sitting out. Actually, they were stacked up nicely, which is how I designed them to be, so that you could see the headers. And they were kind of like hot button things that people, that clients are looking for. So
Christmas, everyday patterns, and then you had lettering and patterns, right?
Yes, right. Everyday designs, and these are words I came up with. They're not necessarily standard words, but Christmas holiday is 50% of art licensing deals. So I definitely wanted to show I can do this. I have this. Check it out. Yeah. So I made. That was the first one. That was a given. I was like, I'm going to do Christmas. It's done.
Krishna is asking, and I'm pretty sure you printed them on Blurb or something like that, and they are hardbound.
Yes.
And they're 12 by 12, I believe.
Right.
Can you just show us the spread so that she can kind of get an idea? So it wasn't like maybe one image, but you had multiple images on some of the spreads, right?
Right. Depending on the design. I mean, sometimes I would do just one image in the spread. And if something worked well as a series and I wanted to show several on a page, in my Skillshare class, Make It Fun, Make It Sell, I talk about the importance of having things in kind of a series. It really just helps ground an image, even if it's just, let's say, one main thing and other things are just details and not really that important, but just complementary. It really helps the viewer kind of gain an understanding of, okay, I get this. I get what's going on here, and not just, oh, that's pretty, let's move on. And also when you have a variety of takes on the same thing, then people have choices. They know that they want coffee, but maybe not this one, maybe a little more like that one. And you really, at these shows, what you want is talking points. So of course, the ultimate goal is to have something that someone just falls in love with and says, I want that, and I'm going to sign a contract right here and there. That's great. But really more than anything, you want to engage them. You want to show them what you can do. People don't know what you can do until you show them. So I would lay out these books. I learned that, I mean, they were actually my biggest asset, I think. I did have, the backdrop banners, and there was one that's really memorable because it had typography, which was a huge hit. And we could talk about that later. But these books were such an asset because even if they weren't interested, because that happens, with a laptop, it's like, yeah, I'm done. But with a book, you feel almost committed to turn the page and that curiosity. It was such a great spark. But mostly what I've seen artists do with their books when they take them to trade show, their Blurb books, they are not hardbound. I chose hardbound because I wanted to keep these for a while and reuse them. And I knew that I needed them to stand up. And they're usually just like, what's new, what's my best. So if someone wants to see your work, then you say, this is my work. And it should be a concise snapshot of your best work. So at the very least, yes, one is good to have right there.
So Catherine said she was at SAV, which I don't know what that is.
Savannah.
Okay. And then and then Maria said those are beautiful. And then Krishna has a question. How does the process, the signing the contract, finalizing the deal happen at Surtex? Like, what's the process from the moment the buyer engages with your work to signing the forms? Does that actually happen at Surtex?
It happens in certain areas. So most of the floor is for art licensing, and you're only allowed to basically make connections. The area where I was in the design district, you were allowed to and encouraged to not only license, but also sell rights to work. And you could make deals right then and there. That whole part of signing contracts in person did kind of freak me out. I've done that via email, and I can read through everything, right? And digitally sign or sign and scan or whatever. And it's you're making a deal and a binding deal, and you want to make sure that you're doing that right. But I came with my own contracts that were ready to go. They were actually on carbon, like 2-ply, so that the client could walk away with a copy. That's not necessarily something that has to happen. You can just send them a PDF. They'd probably be just fine. They're like, great, got that. Okay, walking on to the next thing. But it is a little nerve-wracking, but to be prepared with the contract you have, to have fields where you can fill in what piece it is and all those terms that, are variables that change, and have what doesn't change already printed there. Signatures, payment, discussed, good to go.
You kind of talked about this, but Daniel asked, have you considered using iPads? But really, it could only really get one person at a time, right? This way you could at least have 3 people. And if they were interested in something else, you could show them. I'm sure other people did have iPads. Yep. What did you feel like was because you had a computer there for someone, right? So you had the digital. I mean, it probably would be good to have both, but you felt like the books were really like the
books were bait.
Icing.
The books are bait, and the laptop is good for when someone is looking for something super specific. Unless you're able to print everything you have, which I also have seen exhibitors do, where they have, in order to go a less expensive route, they have 3-ring binders and sleeves where they put in their latest work, and they can work right up to the show. They don't have to worry about printing time for those books, and they come with their binders, and when people ask for something, then they can show them physically. That's another route to do it. But with the iPad or the laptop, I do think it's necessary, because someone may ask you, what do you have for greeting cards for Father's Day? And so something that specific you might not have printed, and it's good to just be able to search and show them what you have. So many of these clients everyone is very time deprived, and especially I think art directors, they have very distinct taste, or they know exactly what they're looking for. And so they're able to sift through things quickly. A little disarming, right? Because you're thinking, are you sure you really looked through that? Because there might have been some jewels you passed up there. But they know. And, let's say if it's a greeting card company like I was talking about, they have so many needs, right? So they're like, we need so many Christmas, we need so many Mother's Day, we need so many of this. And they have their check boxes. So they're looking specifically for something. And for that, definitely the iPad or computer is good. If you don't have a ton of work and you can print it all, that would work just fine too.
So Krishna has a couple more questions. One, so you're going prepared with a contract that you fill out the details. Is that what a lot of people do? I mean, that seems pretty ballsy to go and do that, to be honest, because a lot of times people will give you their contract and it has a lot of stuff that I wouldn't want to sign also. So, I mean, did a lot of people do it like how you're doing it?
No.
But it worked. It worked for you.
It did. I mean, the common practice is definitely follow up, and I also did my due diligence with that and did follow up. But I was encouraged by the organizers to be prepared as much as I could be, and I'm all about seizing the opportunity. So yes, I have seen people sign things in person. I haven't seen their contracts. We don't really show each other. But they want to know, these clients, they want to know that they're going to have that and someone behind them is not going to take it.
Right.
So it's, and some people, they're maybe between deadlines, so they're not feeling in a pinch, or they have a different personality. It's not like everyone was there to sick them, but I wanted to be ready. And yes, it was ballsy. But I have seen, I hopefully have seen enough contracts to know exactly like what I wanted in there, and I want my samples and I want my, copyright very
Clear.
very well thought out, clear.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, it was tiny print. I'll say that.
So Krishna says that way, if one person buys for mugs and then another buys for sheets, you're able to customize. But I would think some people would have a problem with that. So they were buying for mugs, but they didn't want it to be on anything else. Did you get that kind of?
If they want that, then they request those rights for more,
and they pay for that, right? That's part of the what they pay for. All right, so we had another question. Are they approaching you with a fee in mind, or do you have your own fees set up and end up negotiating?
Both. So they definitely come forward with a budget. I mean, the person that's coming to decide on your artwork has the power to decide on your artwork. They might not have the power to negotiate. So if you're wanting to negotiate, you need to probably, give it some time. They need to go back with their team. And, if they're paying you more for something, then they need to pay someone else less for something else. And so there are a lot of variables that come into that. But I have I'll usually take their lead and understand that there might be some wiggle room. There's typically wiggle room, according to what I've read from the Graphic Artists Guild guidebook. Yes.
Something's
love that
falling
thing.
in my, oh yeah, it is.
Oh, I thought you were going to grab it.
Yeah, no, I have that, but my books were tilting over and it sounded like this whole thing was coming crashing down on me. So I was a little afraid, but I do have that, I have that book. I'm going to find it. Oh, I have the Pricing and Ethical Guidelines book.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, I have an old version, but let me get it to show up everybody.
Yeah. You have a bunch of bookmarks on it too. I see the bookmarks.
Yeah. Well, I teach from this. So it's, all, I mean, they're reading and a lot of dog ears and a lot of things that are highlighted or underlined and stuff like that. Because there's so much stuff that we don't know and we're not really taught. I mean, and this isn't like, hey, I'm going to read that book this weekend. It's kind of like reading, but I sure appreciate it. And maybe Brian's here. He's like my Vanna. Maybe he'll give us a link on Amazon so we can, it will be in the show notes, but it's the handbook, the Graphic Artists Guild Pricing and Ethical Guidelines. It is. He's so good. Do you see how fast he is? He rocks.
Yeah, and I do think it's great to be a member too. But if you can find them used, then go for it.
Awesome.
A member of the Graphic Artists Guild.
Yeah. So, are you a member of the Graphic Artists Guild?
Yes.
Oh, awesome! I didn't even know there was something you could join. To be honest, that's my idiotness.
They have a lot of webinars on things that I'm vastly unfamiliar with, it's basically the business side of illustration or design that, you don't want to have to do, but you just need someone to hold your hand and walk you through it in a webinar. That's why I'm a member.
But that's one of the things that I love about you is that you've really kind of done a ton of research on your own to figure out what you should do, and you've tried some things, and I thought this was really courageous of you to go to, and I think your friends, you and your husband and another couple was at dinner, and they were like, well, why don't you just do it?
Yeah.
And they kind of
called so what are you going to go do exactly? I'm going to walk it. But what are you going to do at the show? I'm going to walk it and probably be overwhelmed. And he asked me again. I'm like, okay, I get it. Right. and he was right. We need to have dinner again. We keep rescheduling it just so I can tell him you were right, Joe. You were right.
So ended up being something that was successful. I feel like you had some areas, and again, in the questions that I sent out, we did B2B. And if anybody doesn't know what that is, it's a B and then a 2 and then a B. And that means it's business to business, because she's selling as a business to another business instead of business to consumer like Etsy would be, or like a craft show or something, that's a business. B2C is what they call that in the language. Sorry,
I was laughing at Joe's comment there.
I'm sure they are, Joe. It's just something.
People named Joe are usually right about a lot of things. It sounds right too. Like, okay, Joe, yeah, you're right. Thanks.
Well, that Joe's pretty smart too. So I'm gonna I think we've kind of answered number one,
yeah,
but
we've just really like dove in. Like
we did, but I think I really do feel like that is what people are interested in. And I don't know, Andre, why you couldn't join this graphic artist guild. It doesn't have anything about America. I mean, I think he says Portugal has no associations or guilds or societies of illustrators. Well, you could be part of ours. So just because you're in Portugal makes no difference. We got the internet, buddy. All right. So how long? So you were represented by somebody else for 3 years, and then you struck out on your own. And I kind of want to know if you've always had that entrepreneurial spirit, or because some people are happy being represented. And what was it that you were like, I can do this on my own, or I wasn't getting enough work, or what was it that took you to that next stage?
Yeah. To be honest, I'm not sure if it was the particular agency or if it's me versus having an agent. That's not clear yet, and maybe in a year or so I'll know. But I just felt like I could represent myself better. So again, I don't mean to say that against that particular agency or to make myself sound awesome. But when you have a middleman going through emails and you feel over and over like, I could have said that, or I would have said it a little differently, or I wish they would have included this, then you start to understand like, okay, maybe I should take the wheel on this. And I also, to be honest, I didn't like the thought of, someone asking, hey, what do you have for this specific category? And the agents saying, well, this is what we have from all of our artists, right? And it's great for the client. So I understand that perspective, but I wanted to be able to arrange my work together and say, when someone sends me an email and says, what do you have? We're looking at doing craft journals. What do you have that would work well for that? I like being able to pull that myself and I feel like I really understand my work to be able to say, this would look great on a craft journal, and this would, and this, you might not think so, but, once I mock it up, what do you think? And yeah, it took a long time for me to decide actually to stay or to go. And I had a chat with Jennifer Nelson about it, and she told me within 10 minutes, and then I paid for the rest $150 hour. But it's a process, and it like everything, it always comes back to understanding you and what you want and where you're headed, and then the no's fall into place, right? If you know your yeses, your no's will fall into place.
Right, but I also feel like you're pretty business minded, and I feel like I don't know if that's just something that came natural to you. And I know your mom had her, she was in the design world, and so you kind of always maybe grew up with that, and so maybe that was a regular conversation. So maybe
definitely, I mean, we took my husband and I took like a million personality tests before going overseas, and it was interesting to see that strategy was one of my strengths in the StrengthsFinder test, and yet I'm cautious, so I'm like the C or whatever. If you guys have done any of these, this makes sense to you. If not, I'm sorry. I'm speaking another language. My top strength is maximizer, which means that I see something and I want to just milk it for all it's worth and get the best out of it and make it awesome. And so that's why I'm constantly, that coupled with the strategy part, I'm just constantly asking how things could be better, looking for inspiration. And when I decided I was going to Surtex, I'm like, I'm going to do this right within this small amount of time. But, I'm going to figure out what's most important to me. And just like, if I were planning a wedding, and I don't really care what color the napkins are, I'm not going to worry about the napkins. I'm just going to worry about the band, because the band is going to carry this party through. So you figure out what's really most important to you. I've always been a bit driven and experimentative, but also very cautious. So,
but you know what? I think that goes back to watercolor. I know that sounds like a crazy analogy, but think about it.
It comes back to watercolor.
It does but from what I've learned from you through that Skillshare classes or those Skillshare classes is that you start off light. That's you have a strategy of how you can't just put it out there, but then you also what the order needs to be, and you maybe attack it a different way in different times, but you do kind of have it is cautious. You have to be sort of cautious in watercolor, right?
You have to be cautious and bold, and I love watercolor.
Yeah.
So but I couldn't teach watercolor if I couldn't break it down into steps of how did I get there. And I didn't know I could teach until I kind of challenged myself to do that, which is kind of a pattern, just like with Surtex and with anything else. I'll just kind of throw myself into the water and figure out how to swim, and then reverse engineering it to make it hopefully understandable to everyone else.
Well, and it's that you're not maybe afraid to fail, and that you're just okay at trying.
I'm afraid to fail. I don't want to fail. No.
I know, but you go at it, and you don't fail, but you go at it in such a gusto, like, well, what's the worst that could happen? You know? And a lot of people, they would be too afraid to go have their own booth, or no, I'm going to walk the show, Joe, you know?
I found that I found other blogs really helpful, but I kind of like absorbed some of that anxiety that you'd sense, which is lovely to read and so transparent. But I'd like close the blog on, this person's first show and what they learned from it, and think, I feel what they felt and feel like, what am I doing? Is this going to be worth it? Is it too soon? Is it the right time? Do I have enough work? And you can go on. And I do go back to that question that you mentioned. What's the worst that could happen? So I really do ask myself, okay, worst case scenario, I'm out $5,000.
Right.
And is that worse than not trying? And the answer could be yes or no. But that's really the question. And if I can answer that, then I'll take the next step and move forward in my plunge, I guess, to go with the pool analogy.
Do you think, I like it. Do you think that having an agent helped you with pricing, or do you think that somebody going in, I've never had an agent, I just go, I'm going to do Surtex, like, what if you're pricing something? I feel like this is something as design and illustrators we don't talk about enough. And I feel
it's hard to, because it's like a case by case basis. So it's not like, you can put a price list out there either, because it depends on how much they stand to make from it, then you stand to make your chunk. So it's not just those three categories. It's also kind of, well, if this is going to be everywhere and for 5 years, then that means you're going to be making this much. Versus I sold the license to one greeting card that was in one country for one holiday season. And that was vastly different for the same design for another company. And that was through the agency. And so I did learn that. I think if you're new and you don't know how to price things, honestly, the clients don't typically come to you asking, what do you charge for this? I did get that question. I won't say that it doesn't come up, but they already come with a frame in mind. And so tease your way of how to say, well, how much do you want to pay? And not that way, right? So, there's kind of a range that I've done this in. If you feel more comfortable giving a range, that's great, because then people feel some freedom. They feel like you're not rigid and saying, this is this much, take it or leave it. So providing a range, or also just saying, like, honestly, with this design, I've sold it for different prices depending on the usage. Let's talk more about that. Skirt the whole pricing issue. Come back to it when you feel like you've got your feet on the ground and you're over the freak out from that question.
Right.
But just feel free to ask them what their budget is. I think that they would value that, or feel valued. by
So
your asking that.
I'm going to, I don't know, call Catherine out a little bit. And maybe, Catherine, you can share us a link of something like this. So she had done these illustrations that take a long time because she's doing these portrait exact illustrations. I believe she's using pen or pencil. I don't know. It's amazing, to be honest. But they look like they're like 12 by something. And then she was doing these for Men's Health, I think once a month or whatever. She was doing a series of these. Again, this is more editorial. But, you know, so it is just going in once. They're, you know, not necessarily using that again. But that's something that, and she said she, graphite, once a month on and off. And Andre says pricing is what I struggle with the most. And Brian put up Catherine's website, which will be in the show notes. But that she also felt like it was a waste of time to price, because really they came with their goal. But how much does it, do you think about how big or how long something took you?
I don't. And I'll tell you why. I used to. And then you start seeing work that doesn't take people that long and you get angry. Because you figure, oh, they're making all this money and they didn't work that hard at it. But really, it's about what people are jumping towards, right? But they don't know how much time you spent on it. They don't know what a headache it was. They just know what your piece makes them feel or what they know it can be used for. And so I really just stick to the usage piece, because if I start pricing out hours, you know, you look at your work hours, and I don't know if you've heard this said before, but you have $1 an hour hours and you have $100 an hour hours or more. And so it's just really hard. You can't figure out, okay, this took so long, so if I'm selling it for this much, then I made so much an hour.
It's more about value.
And the great thing about licensing is after, you know, if a license is up or whatever, you can reuse that image. And so there's always the hope that, you know, the one that does well will carry the ones that were more of a learning experience, that were constructive in that way, but not monetarily.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So, and there's other things. I know I've talked to Danielle Evans, who did some work for Target. She does food typography, and she said, you know, they had a price, and then they wanted to do something else, and they said, well, how about if we do a video? And so it was more about social proof, you know, because Target was sharing this video of her work, which I feel, and Brian just shared that marmalade blue like the French spell it. And he showed that, and that video really did help her, you know, and get her name out. And so sometimes that is important. And I think it's those learning things, but at some point you still have to pay your power bill, you know?
I've done so much work for so little. And I didn't even know at the time. That's the thing. I mean, it's not like I was pricing myself cheap because I just thought I have to pay my dues, you know, or I'm just happy it's going to be out there. I mean, I'm sure those were both factors too, you know, sometimes, but looking back, it's just, I know it's part of your extended learning. I mean, you are getting paid either way. If it makes you bitter, raise your prices. I mean, I think that as creatives, one of the things that you have to fight against the most is being burnt out and getting bitter, and it affects your work, and then you get in this spiral where you're just doing what you think people want and you're just kind of angry about it. And it's not good for anybody.
No.
So
not at
do
all.
what you need to do to enjoy what you're doing. Because if you're not enjoying it, then what's the point, right? I mean, why are you doing the late nights or putting yourself out there and feeling those feelings? You know, what's the point?
All right. So let's jump back to Surtex a little bit. So this is a 3-day show, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday?
This year it was. It's not usually, or not always.
Okay.
Those days.
It's always 3 days though, usually? Yes. So, and you know, it was in New York City. So you had people who were, and you talked about this. I saw a video that you did. I think it was on Lila Rogers, kind of as an alumni thing.
Yep.
But it was Sunday. You had people that maybe didn't live in New York that were there, and they came to the show. And you were really busy all 3 days, which that necessarily isn't always the case, right?
Right. So I was told to expect the first day to be crazy busy, and then the second day to be pretty nice, and the third day to be dead. And that's because in other years it started on a Monday or midweek, and so that, you know, that affects like the excitement. So people come in for that first day, and you can see that pattern. But with it starting on Sunday this year, I'm not sure if they predicted this, but what happened was you had a different crowd every day, so it was steady. It wasn't, you know, I wasn't losing my hair at any point, and there were moments where I was like, this is going great. Wow, I'm talking to several people. And then there were moments where I was like, I think I can go to the bathroom now.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll stay longer. So, but it was still steady, and that was great. So yeah, on Sunday you had the people who flew in. I got to use my Mandarin. It's just like all over the place. It's just really interesting, the diversity of clients that walk through. So someone is asking, what do you have for gift bags or makeup bags, or, to my surprise, candy wrappers. So yeah, it's great. And then on the second day, then there were more of the local New Yorkers, or people who were close enough that their flight wasn't, you know, super long. So they would fly Monday morning, you know, and have their Sunday at home, because they were back to work on Monday. And then on Tuesday, then you had the people who were students, because that's the day when a lot of students do get a free pass to walk through the show, or people that had been there Sunday or Monday and knew exactly what they were coming back for.
Cool. So what was your favorite part of the experience, and would you do it again?
Favorite part of the experience, specifically for Surtex, was a story that I shared on the Skillshare blog last month. And it was of a large company recognizing me. Well, one of the four. When you see 4 badges, you're like, oh, they must be a big deal, right? Recognizing me because of my classes. And I had quite a few of these moments, and they were so exciting, you know, like, hi. And, you know, it's so funny because they recognize you, and I'm like, hi, I don't know who you are. And, you know, then there were introductions, and it was like, oh, okay, you took this class. Okay, great. And that was a fun moment. But for the first time, like, I saw that world kind of coming into the illustration art licensing world for me. And that kind of blew my mind, that then him knowing me, then he introduces me to his team, and they start looking at things, and they picked out quite a few things that they were interested in. And I just kind of sat back and was like, I just feel like you just don't know what to expect. And I think, to add on to that question, the biggest lesson that I learned was, you know, I thought I was going to go there and feel the fierce competition, and feel better than, lesser than, compare. Everyone's in it for the same client, so you feel kind of like that, oh, why did you get to talk to them? I didn't, or, I don't know, all these crappy feelings. But I was amazed. I mean, I was strengthened to see that there is a diversity of artists, and there's a diversity of clients. And you've heard it before, but to see it in person, that someone comes up to my booth and they're saying, yeah, so I do this and we do that, and this is our product. And I'm thinking, you know what? You need to talk to this girl across from me. That's what she does. You should go talk to her. And they strike up a conversation and start their relationship. And then the same was reciprocated to me. Like, you need to talk to Amarilys, because that's what she does. And it wasn't, you know, I'm not saying like, gosh, the illustration world, people are so nice, it's just awesome. I just think like we just recognize that we're here because we want to do what we do. And so if I know that we're not going to gel, I know that, you know, around the corner there is somebody who you do need to see, and you might walk past them, and you should do that. And that was a great thing for me to see, because isolated in my studio in the back of our house, I don't see that. I just see, aw, that looks cool. I wish I had done that on Instagram. Or that's a great deal that they got. Oh man, how did they get in touch with Starbucks? You know, whatever. And and then to be able to feel like, okay, you know what? It's a big world out there. Everybody calm down. Like, it's okay. And would I go back? I think at the end of day 2, yeah, that's when I looked at my husband and I was like, yep, we're coming back. He's like, all right.
That's great. That's, I feel like the world is made of lots of people like that. And I definitely think there are people who aren't like that too. But I do believe that there are a lot of, because it kind of goes back to what you said earlier. You got to know where your yeses are and where your nos are, and what your yeses are. If it's a no, then you can send it to somebody else who does. And I feel like all of us don't do everything awesomely. So why not just do you really good? And then when it's not, when somebody else comes to you and wants you to do person B, when you don't do that, then you can send them to who you do know. And I think it's just about having a network of people who do different things from you.
And when you have done work that's not really in your wheelhouse because you thought, oh, I could do that. Maybe you can, but you're going to hate it. You know,
right.
Once you walk out of that experience, you're like, someone else should have done that and would have just enjoyed that so much. But like passing that on is great.
This is a new experience for you that somebody else had done. You had added a rep, and then you took it on, and it was still within your wheelhouse, even though it was new. You know what I mean? But I think you were called to do it. Like you had kept thinking, I could have said that differently. And so you knew that you could sell your stuff. So how would you prepare differently for next year? And would you get the same kind of lemonade stand booth?
I'm not allowed to have the lemonade stand booth. That is only for first timers. So yeah, it was kind of like, okay, are we going to come back? As if we do, it's going to be the larger booth. So that answers that question. What was what I would do differently, or what I'll do better? I should have thought of this. Because, I mean, it's not like that there's nothing. It's just that they're all kind of on the same level. I would show things maybe a little clearer. I think that when we go to these things, or when we're showing our work, and branding is so important. I'm not taking away from that, but we want to arrive and be like, this is me. And companies, they want to understand who you are, but really they just want to know, do you have what I need?
Right.
And so I would make my setup just clear in, this is what I have. You want it? You know,
like what you're best suited for, kind of like what,
instead of like, I mean, you do want to show the work that you want to get. So there's that, but I've seen like elaborate booth layouts that look beautiful, but they don't inspire to buy. And I don't know. I'll think about how exactly I would communicate things clearer, so that when someone says, "Oh, you did that lettering," that I was amazed at how many people were like, "Wow, you did that by hand." It's like, well, yes, that's what you do. And to have more samples, even if they're not like finished pieces, they just want to see, you know, which one they'd gravitate towards, which style they gravitate towards. So maybe more of a catalog feeling, rather than look at my awesome work feel. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So showcase your strengths is what Brian said.
And show in a way that clearly communicates what you do and what you can do, rather than polished work.
Right. So when you go, are they buying stuff that already exists, or are you getting some new things to be like, hey, can you create this for us?
Both. I am going for I want that because I've already invested my time in that. Right. But of course, I'm always open to, I know that you have a specific need, and you know, you see something in me, sure, let's talk about what else we could do here. So that's plan B for me. So yeah, both.
Okay, so This is a selfish question, and because I'm planning on focusing on building illustration skills in January, doing more of or redoing some of your Skillshares. Thankfully, I have a monthly subscription during my sabbatical, which is next January, goes January through May, thankfully. And I want to know if you've taken any classes, like the blogs that you read, anything that you would think would help me or somebody else kind of in that same now I'm more of a newbie, and I think like Andre's more way ahead of me for sure because he's an illustrator. But anything that helps you understand that world of marketing and creating the illustrations to sell different consumer goods. What do you think has helped you create new work and stir up new ideas for trend areas as well? Because that's really a big thing within this, because you found that lettering was kind of natural, I think, for you, but people really gravitated to you because of the lettering, because that was a trend, right?
Yeah, and I was amazed at how many applications there were. Like, I knew that lettering was a big deal, but I've seen it like on books, or I've seen it on stationery, like, Heck Yes, or whatever, something cute. But it's also on makeup bags. Yes, it is. It's also on gift wrap, and so I was surprised that some clients that I wouldn't expect to be interested in lettering were really interested in lettering. So my where I go for trends, I feel like I absorb a lot of trends, or I'll actually see something and I will genuinely just be curious to see what it will look like if I did a unicorn. I've never done a unicorn before. I want to do a unicorn now. So I try to stay away from unicorns are really big right now. I got to do a unicorn. Llamas are really big, or whatever. Trend boards, they might seem a little hard to access, but if you are looking for them and you start looking through Google, if you start looking at large manufacturers, they do tend to create work, sell pieces that are all congruent and go together in a set, and seeing how things interplay. So you have, flamingos and coral colors and balloons, and you start to kind of piece together the trend in a way that you can't just by looking at single images. I think that that's really important because it also inspires you to create your own pieces that aren't necessarily copying that flamingo, right? It's a vibe, I guess, that you're trying to kind of capture in your mind to then internalize how you want to spin it. So that's super useful.
What about blogs or videos or courses or anything that you've done?
Yeah, I haven't seen too many of these pumped out recently, but I do like the Heart to Art chats with the number 2 on Periscope. It's kind of a rabbit hole. All you need are two links, and you will just continue down that path and go kind of nuts. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but going back to your strengths, and then where are the gaps in your illustration work where you need to focus on. Like maybe you don't want to be mainstream. Maybe you want to develop a very unique style, and it's all in. Right? Either people take this one look that I do, or they don't. Or maybe you do need to diversify your portfolio. Prompt yourself on questions. When you walk through a store, if that business had asked you, do you have this? Do you have it? I feel like I have a ton of work. But when someone asks me, what do you have for Mother's Day? And I have half a dozen designs, it's still not a lot to choose from. So I don't know. I think just sometimes challenging myself that way, like thinking of what holiday is coming up, and not just what holiday is coming up, but like, let's say if it's Father's Day, I find it so hard to buy a Father's Day card. Why would I buy any of my designs for my dad? No, so yeah, I think I like to challenge myself. I guess that's what and that doesn't sound like a sabbatical type thing to do, though.
So have you had any mentors, or have you read any books that would help me during my sabbatical on things like this?
So I've read a few books. But the one that I enjoyed recently was by Ronnie Walter. It's called License to Draw. And it's about this thick. So we can all read it. And it walks you through the art licensing business in a very concise way. So I know that online and, through through social media, you hear bits and pieces of what this industry is like. And she just breaks it down in a very simple way and with some humor. And you're like, oh, okay, I get it. And so she was offering coaching sessions, which she does one-on-one at the show. She walked the show. She used to work as an illustrator. I think she still does somewhat, but mostly she's focusing on coaching and does podcast interviews and things like that. And is such a resource. So I jumped on that, and we had a little one-on-one time. And what I found useful, and it might sound very simple, but it helped me kind of sift out and categorize how this works, is the way she sees it is that there's basically two ways to work as a surface designer. In one camp, you have people who develop their portfolio to satisfy the needs of the client, right? And so they're doing greeting cards and decorative flags and floor mats and kind of things that are somewhat timeless and you've seen over and over again, but they will get work over and over again. And then there are the artists who revolve their portfolio around a message or a look or something that they want to come across. And they feed culture and trends, and they're looking for the right manufacturers who get them. Mm-hmm. And defining which camp you're in, that second one is more focused on publishing and stationery and giftware, helps you figure out where you want your portfolio to go, and also kind of where your tribe is, right? So there are a lot of artists when I walk into Surtex and I'm thinking, whoa, and don't like, wow, oh, that's different. And it was helpful to me to see that there was one artist who does just Christmas, and she decked out her booth super Christmassy, and that's what she does all year, and she does well at that, right? And then you have artists that are very hip and they have kind of a very distinct look about them, and they seem to have kind of something that they want to communicate. And so figuring out which camp you're in, and therefore where that kind of art is used in, helps a ton to relieve the pressure of trying to be everything, and for targeting your client.
I think that's super helpful. So she was just walking, but you had already read her booth. Her book.
Yeah. So I am in a Facebook group called Art of Licensing. I believe it's open, or at least open for invites. And she's in that group, and she's constantly offering great advice and insight. And I thought I should check her out. And then I read her book, and then I saw that she had posted in that group that she was going to do these one-on-one half-hour sessions. And I jumped on that. And she actually provided clarity on a sticky situation between two clients that were competing, because she knew the background on both of them, which is super helpful.
So it's just like having somebody who's been in the industry, who knows some of it. It's kind of like being able to pick her brain in some of those, but you are still in the group. You can still ask her questions as well, but she also has this second thing outside of that, that's with her own website at Ronnie, RONNIE, Walter, WALTER.com.
Yes.
Awesome. So is that how you found her book, was through the Facebook group or through something else?
It was. But if you're just looking for illustration books, because I started to look for what else was out there, it does come up on Amazon. There aren't that many out there.
It's kind of, maybe is it sort of like this, but you said it had humor, right?
Yes, it tells her story, and it says what this business is. That's more like the ethical guidelines are more like, this is how you should do things, and beware of,
it goes through some law stuff as well, like technical things, that copyright or So this was more kind of like a story, her story.
This is, yeah, and this is definitely, I think, a good starter book for people who really are just trying to wrap their minds around what art licensing is.
We kind of talked about, I feel like you've made these super cute llamas. And I haven't really seen a lot of llamas, but I'm like, man, she's really making llamas. Like, be like the unicorns or something. And the only unicorn I see regularly is the Squatty Potty unicorn. So I didn't even know unicorns are really popular. But I don't have kids, so maybe.
Go to Target. I mean, really pay attention at Target, and you'll be like, oh, geez, I just saw 3 llamas. They must be a big deal, right? You'll find a llama salt and pepper shaker and a llama print and a llama notebook. I dare you. And what's really funny is that these buyers are buying art for 2019. I don't know how long trends last, but I guess they do.
So we have 2 other questions from the audience. One is Daniel. So he said, what kind of materials were you giving away at the show?
Oh, that's a good question. I gave away doodle notebooks, and I'm looking around wishing that I had one at the ready. And I think the typical giveaway is a postcard, which I resisted doing because I was like, everybody's getting tons of postcards. But I did do eventually because it's almost like expected, and people want to have something that they can pin easily. But I also wanted them to have something that they could keep and stumble upon, or even regift. Like, I was like, I'm giving little sketch books. They're basically just very thin notebooks with little prompts inside, with my design on the outside, to grown men, and with a unicorn on it. And I'm like, here, give this to you got a daughter? Like, take this. I don't see you using this, but that's okay. So pocket notebooks are great. Like, who doesn't like getting a little notebook, right? Something to sketch on the subway. So I gave that, and the postcards and business cards. And much to my surprise, something that you should take with you to a trade show is a stapler. Because a lot of art directors come with their own agenda, notebook or whatever, planner, and they want to staple your business card to their book so they can write notes. And I didn't expect that. I had tape. So, yay, I had tape for them to use. But, yeah, someone told me, oh, well, so-and-so has one, and I'll just borrow hers. Okay, yeah, next year get a stapler. I'm like, yes, ma'am. Okay.
You're like, I can do that. I can absolutely do that.
Surprise.
So Krishna had to take a call in the middle. So she said, if you had to give her one advice for someone who's doing their first Surtex show, what would it be? So somebody who's kind of in the same place as you were this past year. I mean, was it maybe the books, or was it something else?
Whatever will make you talk.
Whatever
will make you talk is what's going to work. I'm not really as bubbly and chatty as I am on camera. But I made myself so at these shows. And it's like, what I found is that people walk by and they're looking at your stuff, but they don't really see it until they stop. So if you can make them stop, be it with your book sprawled out, or by asking them a question, or complimenting them on their shoes, just anything that would make them pause. I think that is so key, because so many of my booth mates, and maybe sometimes I came off as pushy, and I'm kind of okay with that, because I'm so not pushy as a person. I'm like, I could be pushy for 3 days and people think that I'm not, I don't feel offended by it because I'm not. But they would just kind of wait to be recognized. And it's not like people weren't seeing their beautiful work. It's just that they weren't thinking it through yet. And you just really have to stop. It's overwhelming to see so much art. And whatever would help you facilitate that, just first conversation.
And you would also do the design district as well again, wouldn't you? Or would you think you would not? Okay.
Yes,
good
that is the lemonade stand area.
Oh.
So that's the same thing, design district. Yeah.
So you can only do that the first year. Other times
Yes.
you're just making connections.
Right.
Huh.
Right.
Well, good to know. So I don't want to keep you. I know you have other things to do. I'm so excited that we got to talk again, and I can't read all of these long things, but anyway, I'm so glad everybody was so engaged again. You're like super popular about getting all this stuff out to people, and I just really appreciate it because it really does make a difference. I want to make sure that everybody knows how to get in touch with you, and I'm going to put that in the chat, but I'm also going to say it out loud so that people can get in touch with you if they're listening on iTunes.
Thank you.
And it's Watercolor Devo, Devo.com. And then if you want to follow her on Instagram, Instagram.com, Watercolor Devo. And let's see some other places because I had a whole ton of them. So on Skillshare, it's Skillshare.com/R, as in the letter like robot, and then /Amarilys, AMARILYS. I just want to make sure everybody, and then you can be like me and order some stuff on Etsy, which I bought for Ashley, who does all my scheduling, and I love Ashley, and she loved her piece so much.
Yeah, she reached out to me. It's so sweet.
Watercolordevo.etsy.com. I just want to kind of make sure everybody kind of has ways to get in touch with you. And I think, and then Facebook, you have a Facebook page.
I do.
Facebook.com/watercolor.
Same handle.
Yeah. Thankfully. That's such a good one, right?
Yeah. And you know, as partly because of the show, I have been working on this hand lettering class for Skillshare. And I am hoping to, it's at that point where it's so close, maybe a couple more hours this afternoon, and it'll be up definitely in time for this podcast to launch. So just disregard what I said.
It will be
go to Skillshare and learn hand lettering because it's not hard and it's lucrative and everybody's got their own style already built in, and so it's just a great way to start to make yourself more marketable as an illustrator. So cool. I'm making it a series because it's such a huge topic, and we're starting with serifs, hand lettering in watercolor with serifs.
Whoa! So so that one will be available, and if they just search on Skillshare for Amarilys, then they'll be able to find you.
Yep.
Right.
Skillshare has a new like profile setting. It's really sassy. You should check it out. I just said sassy. I feel like I'm 40 something, which there's nothing wrong with. I'm going to stop babbling because it's been an hour of me talking. I'm not used to that.
Well, you did. You do.
But this has been fun.
It always is fun. I can't wait. I will look at the class this weekend. I'm not sure if I can dive in, but I only have. Wait, let me see. 46 days as the chair of my department. So after 46 days, I'll be able to really dig in. And so anyway,
if I think of anything else you need to be doing after these 46 days, I'll let you know and you can share it with your audience.
Okay, that would be good. I love your classes and I love what you've been able to teach. So let me just kind of give everybody a wrap up. If you want to get in touch with me, you can get in touch with me at Diane@rechargingyou.com. I also launched something this week. I am kind of recruiting creatives, exactly what Amarilys did for the girl across at the other booth. I am doing that for people who are entrepreneurs who are now going out on their own. Maybe they were a solo entrepreneur and now they've just got so much work they can't do it all on their own. They either need somebody like I have Ashley for or somebody else to do some other work.
Mm-hmm.
So I have budding designers matched with or freelancers that are budding into a new area, budding, not butting, like anyway. So think about something like that. If you're interested in either of those, you can check it out at rechargingyou.com/recruiting-creatives. And also you can always send me an email and I can add you to a list and I can get a conversation going and we'll do a Skype. We're off next week. I'm taking the next week off from school and from Design Recharge, but I'm going to be working on my client work and all this other stuff I have to do. And then I will be back with Austin Saylor, who is a amazing videographer. So I'm glad I'm kind of pulling some different people in. So I hope you check that out. The following Wednesday at 2:30. Austin just got back from spending like a month and a half in London or in England, and they've traveled all around, and now him and his wife are traveling across the United States and finding places to live and staying with friends, and it's going to be a really cool journey. So I'm glad to kind of catch him on the way out. So it is July the 12th. Thank you, Maria. Anyway, I'm real excited. And again, if you want to join the list so that you never miss a Design Recharge episode, just go to rechargingyou.com and sign up. It's right there under the slider is how to get onto this list so you never miss an episode. So again, Amarilys, thank you so much. You were awesome.
Thank you. I'll watch it again and I'll see if I was awesome or not whenever I get tired. I don't get tired of hearing myself speak. But thank you guys. Thank you for your questions. I feel that tinge of I want to like go for it, and that's really, I don't know, invigorating to me.
Well, it's nice to have somebody kind of lay the framework and be honest about what happens instead of it just always being kind of in the dark. And so I really appreciate you kind of do that with a lot of things, and it's made it so that watercolor wasn't so scary to me. And so I feel like you've done it so that Surtex or industry, business to business, trade shows where it's surface design or something else isn't so alien. And I feel like you just made it real for a lot of people. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks.